Have you ever wondered what it would be like for Sam and Dean Winchester to go up against the Twilight and the Vampire Diaries universes? Well, no need to look further. I've got you covered, brother or sister. Now, before we get into this, yeah, I know in Twilight the Cullens are vegetarian, which means Sam and Dean would probably let them off the hook since they've let off vamps in the past, such as Benny. Well, Sam didn't really like him, but Dean did since, you know, he helped him get out of purgatory. But I mean, they've also shown mercy for other vamps and other monsters down the road. But for this video, it's purely a what if. Like, what if Sam and Dean were to hunt down the Cullens and the Salvatores, and what would it look like? So it all starts off when Sam comes across an old hunter's journal buried in one of Bobby's lockers, while Dean, completely uninterested in research per usual, is busy working on his second 12-pack of beer and indulging in his favorite porn magazines. So the journal's filled with notes and newspaper clippings about a town called Mystic Falls, a small place with a suspiciously long history of death. People would disappear and their bodies would turn up with their blood completely drained. And the typical explanation to all of this is always the same. It's just because of an animal attack. But Sam and Dean know better. So Sam would tell Dean and Dean would be like, yeah, I'm all in. Because if there's some vamps, hell, you better bet yourself that Dean wants nothing more than to chop off some heads. So they would load up in the Impala and head south, armed with the usual tools on a hunt for some vamps. So let me explain a little about Damon and Stefan. Stefan kind of plays the good guy trying to make amends for his past, and Damon, on the other hand, is the quote-unquote bad guy. He doesn't hide what he is at all, and he's not regretful for anything. And do you want to know the kicker for both of the vampire brothers? Yeah, they can walk in sunlight thanks to enchanted daylight rings. So that makes them harder to kill and would make it harder for Sam and Dean Winchester to kill them. So right off the bat, they're not normal vampires that Sam and Dean would face, typically in Supernatural. So Sam and Dean would start talking to locals and snooping around town records. They would uncover diaries, historical photos, and police reports that all point to one thing: that the Salvatore brothers have been influencing Mystic Falls from the shadows for over a century. You know, they've manipulated people, they've fed on them, and they even compel witnesses to forget everything about whatever. So with all the research that Sam and Dean would gather, they would be like, okay, yeah, we can't take these two head on. Not without backup, that is. So I feel like Sam would reach out to a contact in New Orleans, a witch with ties to the Bennett bloodline. Because hey, maybe they have some connects out there. Maybe Rowena even knows them if they were, you know, indulged into the universe. Maybe, I don't know. But okay, let's put it like this. Since we don't want to, you know, make up random situations or random scenarios, we can just throw Rowena into the scenario, because Rowena, oh my gosh, she is a very powerful witch and she knows the Book of the Damned. So yeah, she would be very useful in this situation. Now, we're still using lore with Supernatural and the Vampire Diaries, just so you guys know. Now, they would have to come up with a plan, and I feel like they would enchant bullets with white oak ash and vervain, which is kind of used to kill, you know, the vampires in the Vampire Diaries, or even just use the white oak ash daggers from their witches. They could do that as well, but since they've crafted a lot of crafty things throughout their time, they could probably enchant the bullets with white oak ash and vervain if they wanted to, with the help of, you know, witches or Rowena or Castiel, you know. And also, I feel like they would need to trap the vampires in place, and they can use an Enochian script with the help of Castiel. And I feel like they would also lace the entire house that they would, you know, bait them into with anti-compulsion sigils, so, you know, Damon and Stefan can't manipulate their minds, or they could just wear necklaces with vervain. So I mean, how would they perform all of this, you may ask? Because they need bait if they want all of this to work, right? Now, Sam and Dean are the masters of baiters. They're the master baiters. So they would use Catherine as bait, and Sam would like leak intel about her location through like a trusted local throughout, you know, Mystic Falls, so then Damon would hear that. And then since Damon, he's obsessed with his, you know, former lover, would walk right into the trap without a doubt in my mind. Or maybe he doesn't. But for this, let's just say he does, and I feel like he would. So as he steps inside, the binding circle would activate, and they would inject him with dead men's blood. Since it's supernatural, dead men's blood weakens vampires. And since he's completely weakened and damn near immobilized, Dean would move in with a white oak stake, and then boom, straight to the chest or heart, or wherever you wanted. Maybe even decapitate him, hey, why not? Then Stefan arrives, and unlike Damon, I don't really see him him fighting in this situation. He could, and he would put up a hell of a fight, but I feel like he would try to talk. But honestly, now that I think about it, I don't think he would want to talk because Sam and Dean just killed his brother. Actually, yeah, scratch that. He would lash out and be like, what? You killed my brother? They would go back and forth. Sam and Dean would take a beating, and then at the end of it all, Sam and Dean would win because, guys, Sam and Dean always win. Like, literally, they have luck from God. It's basically canon and supernatural that, you know, they're granted this plot armor by God. Not even just by the showrunners or the writers, they're actually granted plot armor by God himself in the universe. So, a few weeks after the Mystic Falls job, Dean would be getting his daily hookup in with a local bartender while Sam picks up on a strange case out in Forks, Washington. A series of brutal animal attacks deep in the woods. Victims are torn apart, yet there's barely a drop of blood left behind. The local law says it's bears or mountain lions, but of course Sam knows better. He's seen this kind of thing before. The cover stories, the clean kills, the lack of evidence. It smells like a good old vampire. So Sam and Dean would head out expecting another nest of bloodsuckers hiding out in the middle of absolutely nowhere, but what they find instead is something a whole lot weirder. So everyone in Forks knows the Cullen family. People describe them as beautiful, polite, and just a little too perfect. And they don't eat in public, they don't hang out with anyone outside their circle, and they avoid sunlight like it's the plague. And just like the Salvatores, these vampires don't burn in the sun whatsoever. They sparkle. Literally, like someone dumped glitter on a marble statue. And at first, I'd see Dean laughing at it all, probably calling them disco balls with fangs. But once they start digging into who the Cullens truly are, the laughing would stop. So the Cullen family is massive. We have Edward, the mind reader, Alice, the future seer, Jasper, the empath who can manipulate emotions, Rosalie and Emmett, the bruisers. Then we have Carlisle and Esme, the mother and father. And then last but not least, we have Bella. Now, she's recently turned, since we're gonna go based off of, you know, the end of the Twilight movies. So she basically has this shield. Now, as we all know, they don't feed on humans, only animals. They talk about restraint, family, and love. They're like this big happy family. They just want to fit in. They don't want to kill people. They just want to live their lives. The Cullens aren't like any other vampires, kind of just like Damon and Stefan. They're faster than anything the Winchesters have ever seen. Like, they might even be faster than demons. And their skin is hard as stone. Like, it's almost impossible to pierce. Like, you can't just stake them. I mean, I guess you could say the cult can shoot them, but really the only way to end them is to rip them apart and then burn the pieces. And this is how they would do it. They would start crafting new weapons, Molotovs laced with holy oil and powdered phoenix ash to ignite on contact. Also, Sam and Dean would have to reach out to a witch in this situation also, so that they can mask their presence from, you know, Alice's visions and Edward's mind reading, because they can see you coming before you're even there, and that would give them the element of surprise. And that's the one advantage they need to survive in this situation with the Cullens. They would have to pick their moment carefully. Maybe when the Cullens are heading out on a so-called quote-unquote hunt, tracking animals in the forest that they could use for blood. So I feel like Emmett would get hit first with the Molotov grenade, boom, right at his feet. That's their first kill. Now Rosalie is mad as hell because Dean just lit up Emmett. Dean would be the bait. Sam can pull out an obsidian blade lined with, you know, angelic sigils because their skin is so hard to pierce. He would dismember her fast, and then Dean would torch the remains before she can even regenerate. So then Alice and Jasper would fall next. Now, without Alice's visions and Jasper's emotions, they would be like, what's happening? But even without their powers, they're still really strong, so they would 100% put up a fight with Sam and Dean, but in the end, they would be GG'd. So Edward and Bella would be at the house. They didn't hunt. They would just be awaiting there for their family return. But instead of their family returning, they're met with Sam and Dean Winchester. Now they're like, where are you guys? Now, keep in mind, when I'm saying all of this, I'm leaving out a lot of details, kind of just like the little details that you would see in the show. Like, let me give you an example. Like every single episode when Sam and Dean go on a hunt, they're always met with some type of challenges. They get hit, then they get back up. They get hit, then they get back up. But in the end, after every single episode, or even every single season, when they're done finishing the main antagonists, they always end up winning, no matter what. Even if they get thrown down, even if they die, they always always come back. So for this video, I'm specifically telling you how they would kill the Cullens or how they would kill the Salvatore brothers. Like, for instance, I'm not adding little details like Sam gets pushed to the ground by Edward, then Dean comes up for a sneak attack only to get sideswiped by Bella in his pursuit. Now, they're both backed up against the wall, and out of nowhere, the random character they met in the first minute of the episode saves them by sticking an obsidian blade in their hearts. Like, I'm not going to go into all of that detail because it's just kind of filler in my opinion. I'm just telling you strictly how they would kill the Cullens at the end of the episodes. I guess that's how I would explain it. Now, when it's all said and done and Sam and Dean have destroyed the entire Cullen family, the house would burn. I feel like they would just burn the entire house. No survivors and no bodies left to bury. And I can picture it just like this, a cinematic when Sam and Dean are walking right out of the front door and then the freaking house explodes right behind them. So cinematic and so cool as Sam and Dean walk off and then they drive off in the Impala, bumping some rock and roll. Hell yeah, brother.